This is Victor, and for this case, we visit the city of Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan, a city which grew from a small fishing village in the 17th century to one of the largest in Taiwan. On a late night, a college student, sound asleep, was jolted awake by the horrifying screams of a man pleading for mercy and help. Terrified, she froze, wondering what was happening. Glancing at the alarm clock, she saw it was 4:40 a.m. What's going on? She thought. Are we under attack? Am I in danger? The screams came from an apartment complex across the road. The student called the cops, pointing them towards the source, an apartment above a street-level music store. When the police arrived, they went to the shop, but found it closed and its door locked. This was the only way inside. After trying the doorbell and calling the shop's phone number to no avail, they waited a while, but eventually left. They saw no ongoing trouble and decided to continue their patrols. It's unclear why they didn't investigate further. Maybe they received lots of fake calls and didn't want to cause damage to the shop without any strong justification. Unfortunately, this regrettable decision could have prevented a tragic loss of life and caught the perpetrators in the act. This is a horrifying case of obsession, manipulation, betrayal, and nonsensical lie after lie that tested the patience of every detective that was assigned to work on it. Fast forward to around noon the same day, a man identifying himself as Mr. Sai, a staff member at the music shop, frantically contacted the police. He explained that the shop's owner's wife had phoned him to report a break-in. She had been tied up. He hurried to the shop, untied her, and after discovering she had not yet alerted the authorities, he called the police. Upon their arrival, police and detectives found Yan Yi Ling, also known as Ling, sitting alone on the first floor. She appeared dazed and distraught, her face tear-streaked and trembling. Ling is described as a slender petite woman, standing less than 5 feet tall, or 150 centimeters. The music store features a multi-floor layout with the ground floor serving as a retail space, showcasing musical instruments, books, and a cash register. The second to fourth floors are used for music lessons, while the fifth floor serves as a residence for Ling and her husband. Police ascended to the fifth floor, finding it nearly flooded with an inch of water all through. Upon entering the bathroom, they initially saw the silhouette of a man sitting upright in the bathtub. Approaching slowly, they found he was naked and bound with masking tape. This was Su Shi-heng, also known as Heng, Ling's husband. He appeared unresponsive and was found to be deceased. The condition of Heng's body was shocking. His face was extremely swollen, very red and purple, and barely recognizable, with severe bruising. His mouth had been stuffed with black underwear and wrapped with tape multiple times, presumably to stifle his screams. His right ear was badly bruised, almost to a pulp, and his left ear was partially torn, dangling from his face. It was evident that he had endured brutal blunt force trauma, primarily to his head and face. A post-mortem examination later revealed that the cause of death was suffocation. He had choked on his own blood and vomit. The merciless brutality inflicted upon him made for a horrific end. Who could have committed such a dreadful act against this charismatic music teacher, described by many who knew him as talented and charming? Examining the bathroom, detectives noted the walls in the bathtub were cracked, which explained the leaking water. There were several holes in the wall, evidence of the violent nature of the incident. Interestingly, it seemed the crime scene had been cleaned up before the police arrived, raising questions about why someone would attempt to obscure the details of such a violent act. The level of violence suggested that this was more than a simple break-in. Typically, you would expect if the motive was money, that the perpetrator would steal and leave, but the brutality indicated a deeper motive, a personal motive. Heng was a drum teacher and Ling taught piano and cello. The couple, married for about 2 years, ran the music store and shop together. They seemed like a perfect match, both personally and professionally. Given the circumstances, why would Heng, a music teacher with a straightforward background, meet such a brutal end? His wife Ling was the only witness at the scene. The detectives split up. One took to examining the house, the others went to question Ling to get her version of the events that had occurred. According to Ling, she and her husband returned home around 1 a.m. after a night out which involved alcohol. At the home, they listened to some music and drank some more before going to bed. Both took some sleeping pills.
你说你们之前在这边喝酒是跟谁在喝？
就我老公。
Around 4 a.m., Ling was jolted awake by the sound of what seemed to be a violent altercation. She heard her husband calling out to her from the bathroom. Rushing to his aid, she found a man with red hair viciously attacking her husband. Shocked and terrified, Ling immediately pleaded with the assailant to stop, offering him all their money. However, her pleas fell on deaf ears as the attacker continued his assault. Desperate to end the violence, Ling resorted to telling the perpetrator that she was pregnant, begging him to spare her husband's life for the sake of their unborn child. Tears were streaming down her face as she recounted the ordeal she had just gone through. According to her story, the perpetrator asked her to fetch some tape to restrain her husband. She walked down to the ground floor, found some masking tape, walked all the way back up to the 5th floor, and handed it over. The assailant then used the tape around her husband's mouth, hands, and feet, after which he asked her to go fetch him some cleaning aids. Once again, she went down to the ground floor, fetching him what he needed, then back up again. This time upon returning, he tied her hands with a silk scarf. She then lay down on her bed while her husband remained in the bathroom. At some point, she fell asleep. Listening to Ling tell her story, one of the detectives mustered all his patience and strength to maintain composure throughout the incredible conditions and coincidences that must have transpired to make the story possible. He found it so strange that she fell asleep on the bed whilst her husband was beaten in the bathroom. The assailant also tied her up with a soft silk scarf, yet brutalized her husband. Also, why didn't she call the police or run away when she had a chance to go down 5 flights of stairs to the ground floor and seek help? Lastly, why did she fall asleep and wait 7 hours to notify anyone? And when she did, she called a staff member and not the police. She didn't even mention checking up on her husband for hours, despite being able to walk around the entire house, practically unhindered.
他戴着口罩，我没有看过他，我觉得应该180吧。
他很壮吗？
At this point, the detective seems to be putting words in her mouth and she seems to be agreeing with anything he says.
胖中。
听到他们对话说要钱，
对，要钱，然后
有没有说什么钱？
他说他什么事，他收了人家的钱，他只希望说这笔钱要给他妈妈这样子。
啊，你先生在外面有跟他债务纠纷吗？
有，做生意的一定有。
The detectives found that all the windows were intact, and the main gate on the ground floor showed no signs of forced entry. Furthermore, no money was taken from the cash register, and the credit cards in Heng's wallet were all still there. If this was a crime motivated by money, why didn't the perpetrator take any? Damage within the house was confined to the 5th floor, where Heng and his wife were sleeping. According to Ling's account, someone entered without breaking in, either ascended 5 flights of stairs or stayed hidden in the house until around 4 a.m., then pulled Heng out of bed while his wife was still sleeping beside him, and began to beat him, which eventually woke her up. A question for everyone watching. How likely is it that you wouldn't make a sound if an intruder woke you up from sleep? After speaking with the music shop's accountant and reviewing Heng's bank accounts, the police confirmed that Heng did not owe money to any debt collectors.
因为我先生是脾气不是很好，他就很容易跟人家发生有些行车纠纷或什么，之前有发生过，我听他在讲，对，就是在外面有时候很喝醉酒。就问他说：“你到底是跟什么关系？是行车的案件吗？还是说有什么平常有什么纠纷，还是欠钱？”然后我就说：“所以还是不是有？”他说：“是啊。”
跟他的女朋友，
前女友吧。
你知道你老公外面有女人吗？
知道，
对。
所以我很生气，大部分是因为这个，可是除此之外我们可能。
Now they're probing her more about this ex-girlfriend of her husband that the assailant is also here for. At this point, Ling is babbling a lot, pushing out words and thoughts as fast as possible. She said they quarreled a lot because of this, but quickly switches gears and says that despite this, they were in a happy marriage overall. Don't forget, previously she claimed the assailant was here to get money to give to his mother, but now he's here for a girl? What exactly is the truth? Detectives discovered something intriguing. Heng had been transferring money monthly to another woman named Rong, who worked as a nurse. Their relationship was not a secret. Even Heng's mother knew about it and mentioned it in a later interview. However, it was puzzling why Ling would claim her husband was in debt while he was transferring money to another woman. Back at the house, it was odd that Ling's husband was attacked around 4 a.m., yet she stayed near the bathroom with his dead body and didn't call for help until around 11:30 a.m. To this, Ling explained that the perpetrator had forced her to take some sleeping pills, causing her to sleep through the incident. At the next part, the detective just interrupted her and called her out.
跟他讲了几个钟头之后，他又喂我吃安眠药，然后我又睡着了。
那我可能讲那么久啊。
He basically interrupted her and asked her outright, "A few hours? How is it possible you can talk to the guy for a few hours? He's just killed your husband." Upon reviewing the CCTV footage, the police made several significant observations. The perpetrator was captured leaving the scene at approximately 11:48 a.m., wearing a cap and a mask and carrying a bag. On the day of the crime, footage shows a man entering the home around 4 a.m. without difficulty. He was led inside without having to break in. Earlier, this person was identified walking towards the house dressed in a female clothing. Did he arrive dressed as a female and change before entering the house? Moreover, the description did not match that of a tall, muscular, and fat man with red hair, as described by Ling. Clearly, something was not adding up. Through careful examination, the police were able to track this walking wardrobe through his meticulously planned escape route. He initially walked a kilometer before hailing a taxi. After a short ride, he disembarked and walked another few hundred meters before boarding a second taxi. The taxi's destination was Keizai-liao, a remote area in the south. The last footage the police were able to track his vehicle to. Unfortunately, when the suspect got off, there wasn't much CCTV footage around to identify his movements. However, a breakthrough arrived when they checked Ling's phone records and noticed she had been testing a man in Keizai-liao on the day of her husband's death. Incredibly, was this the same person she was texting while detectives were at her home? The detectives identified this man as Su Fang Wei, or Wei, who lived in Keizai-liao and worked as an English tutor. Police now established a logical sequence of events. The man left his home around 3:30 a.m. dressed as a female. When he was near Heng and Ling's place, he changed back into his usual attire and was led inside the house, presumably by Ling. Before we proceed, if you're enjoying my work so far, hit like, subscribe with the bell icon for notifications of upcoming cases. Feel free to share or add this video to a playlist. These little actions help. Thank you. Now, back to the case. Arrested. On February 7th, 2014, at approximately 1:30 p.m., the police approached an apprehended Wei. Upon realizing they were law enforcement officers, Wei was visibly trembling and very nervous. He admitted to being the man on the CCTV footage, but insisted that he had acted alone. He claimed he and Heng were in a secret gay relationship and had met through an online arranged sex party. He asserted that Heng owed him around 600,000 Taiwanese dollars, or $18,500 US. Supposedly, half of this amount was to cover expenses for a sex party, while the other was a loan for the music shop. However, despite Wei's allegations, police were unable to find any evidence of the secret gay relationship, sex parties, or even a loan that Heng would be indebted to. Furthermore, they questioned Wei on why he didn't take money from the house. He had no answer. After further questioning and confronted with the text messages between Ling and himself, Wei changed his story. He admitted to harboring sympathy for Ling. She used to confide in him about how upset she was with her husband, describing instances of abuse and frequent beatings. She painted a picture of the control he had over her. As it turns out, Ling had been in a relationship with Wei for a few months. They met online, and he was captivated by her. Physically, she was the first girl he had ever been with, and he desired to have her for himself. He even told his mother about his new girlfriend's troubled past with an abusive ex-boyfriend and expressed his willingness to protect her, even if it meant resorting to extreme measures. Wei was willing to act as a white knight for Ling, no matter the consequences. However, one thing is clear. Ling and her husband's relationship was far from ideal. Neighbors confirmed they often heard them fighting. Heng was also involved with other women on the side. The couple would be on the verge of getting a divorce, but never following through at the end. It could be that because Wei was the owner of the music store, without him, Ling's finances would plummet as she would earn less as a music teacher. The couple were, for lack of a better term, dysfunctionally functional. With Ling's ever-changing narrative now clearly discredited and the suspect apprehended, investigators knew Heng's murder was premeditated. However, with the suspect refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing on Ling's part, the police needed a smoking gun to apprehend Ling for the murder of her husband. During Ling's second interrogation, she denied any involvement and pointed the blame entirely on Wei, alleging that he must have wanted to eliminate her husband so he can have her all to himself. The detectives grew increasingly suspicious, considering Ling's history of deception, and sought concrete evidence to charge her. The break arrived when they looked through her Google search history from January 11th and the 24th, the day of the murder. Her searches included terms related to drowning in a bathtub, purchasing sleeping pills, obtaining a death certificate, arranging funerals, specific types of sleeping pills and tablets, insurance payouts and disputes, and local laws on inheritance. Her browsing history also revealed searches for baby drowned in bathtub, Whitney Houston's suspected cause of drowning, and so much more. It was obvious that it was Ling who unlocked her device using a password and searched these terms. Soon after, she was immediately arrested and charged with planning and participating in her husband's murder. As it turns out, Ling proved to be a poor liar to the detectives, but adept at manipulating Wei over several months. She frequently complained to Wei about her husband's verbal and physical abuse, his insistence on her attending sex parties with him, and being shared around by multiple men, notably with big bellies. She also complained how she felt like the other girl in their relationship, as he was still seeing wrong on the side. These alleged grievances purposely drove Wei to commit the horrific crimes that he did. The marriage. Ling and Heng had a tumultuous marriage. During good times, they attended music concerts together or participated in swinger parties, indicating they were in an open relationship. However, there were instances when Heng was overly aggressive with Ling, prompting her to report this to the police. Ling was also discontented with Heng's continued involvement with other women and vice versa. This prompted the police to look deeper into their past. They discovered that this was Ling's second marriage. She had been involved with Heng while still married to her first husband. Simultaneously, Heng was dating another woman, Rong. After her divorce, Ling married Heng, who continued his relationship with Rong, further fueling Ling's anger. Some sources suggest that Ling and Heng met Wei online through a sex party, leading to a relationship between Ling and Wei. Ling would confide in Wei about Heng's mistreatment, alleging instances of physical violence. The crime. Ling and Wei conspired together to orchestrate Heng's murder. Initially, their plan was to stage it as an accidental drowning by administering sleeping pills to Heng. However, Heng woke up as they were attempting to move him to the bathtub, prompting Wei to improvise instead. He gagged and bound a pleading Heng, who initially thought this was a robbery. Horrifyingly, Wei proceeded to beat him to death without mercy. Later, Ling asserted that she had no part in the planning or execution of the murder, placing the blame solely on Wei. In fact, she claimed that Wei also assaulted her when she urged him to stop. However, considering her past Google search history and her demeanor during the interactions with the detectives, it became quite apparent that if anyone desired Heng's demise, it was Ling. The truth emerges. Ling and Wei conspired to murder Heng. Ling stood to gain sole inheritance of their music shop, life insurance, and freedom from Heng. For Wei, it meant finally having an exclusive partner without competition from another man. Their initial plan was to make the murder look like an accidental overdose and drowning. However, when Heng woke up, their plan unraveled. Instead, Wei bound, gagged, and beat Heng to death. It was extremely unfortunate that the police officers who responded to the call from the student chose not to enter the music store. If they had, perhaps Heng would still be alive today. Despite Ling claiming to also be assaulted by Wei, there were no visible signs of injury on her face or body, and she failed to mention this during initial questioning. Her inconsistent statements and suspicious search history also suggested she was the true mastermind behind this crime. It's interesting how Wei would go through such lengths to protect Ling, while she blamed it all on him and went a step further by claiming that he too abused her. According to one of the detectives, Ling is a master manipulator and Wei was a gullible man who thought with his heart and not with his head. He was used and discarded the moment he served his purpose. If there is one thing we can learn from this case, it's to maintain a healthy, skeptical mindset. Ironically, despite admitting to Wei being the assailant after he was caught, Ling never revised her initial description of the perpetrator, which was a tall, muscular man with red hair, and bore no resemblance to Wei. This deliberate misdirection was just one of her many lies that she kept telling over and over again. Ultimately, both Wei and Ling were found guilty of homicide. The two defendants were sentenced to life imprisonment for the premeditated murder of Su Si Heng or Heng. Ling maintains her innocence to this date, while Wei, the perpetual apologist, landed in trouble again. He was found guilty of aiding his cellmate in ending his own life. It seems Wei will never learn to stay out of people's business. Now, check out some of my other cases on screen, or a playlist of all my cases to date. I would appreciate if you took a moment to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and get notified of all my upcoming cases. This is Victor. Thanks for watching.